Hi, welcome to the Shepherd Podcast. I'm your host. I'm Pastor Chris. Thank you for joining us for today's episode. The podcast is a way to acquaint you with people at the church, school, and childcare within our ministry here at Shepherd of the Hills, people I think you might like to get to know better, and also people who have something interesting that I think that you'll learn from and enjoy and that will be a benefit to you. Today, I'm really pleased to introduce to you and share with you about Mark Lackie. Mark is an elder at our church. He's also the leader of our Griefshare program, and he's a blessing in those ways and in many other ways. Mark is a lifelong resident of San Antonio, graduated from Churchill High School, and went to UTSA as well. Came to know Jesus in college, and so he can remember that experience converting to the Christian faith by God's grace. Mark is a CPA. He also, for fun, likes to do genealogy and is a Civil War buff. So, without any further ado, now it's my pleasure to introduce you to Mark Lackie. Mark, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Pastor. I'm looking forward to this.
Now, first of all, why don't you share a little bit about your journey in coming to Shepherd of the Hills and what led you here and how your life circumstances played into that?
Well, I was a member of an ELCA congregation, and actually at the time I was the president of the congregation. And the ELCA was having some issues that we all well remember, and our church was a small inner city church, and so our church chose to close down. And so that made all of us have to look for new churches, and we really didn't want to be looking at ELCA congregations. So my wife, Rhonda, was raised in the Missouri Synod, and so she made it very clear to me that we were going to start attending a Missouri Synod church. And so on one Sunday, she attended Concordia, and I attended Shepherd of the Hills, just out of, just luck. I came to Shepherd, and when I walked in the door, the very first person I saw was Jimmy Friesenhan. And Jimmy Friesenhan was a former member of Zion Lutheran Church. And so at least I had an immediate contact with somebody and felt comfortable. And then lo and behold, I sat right behind him in church, and I sat down, and then he came and sat down, and I just felt like I was home. And so I went home. Rhonda went to one other church. I don't remember the name of that one. And then she came here and she liked it. And she really liked the way you and Pastor Dan used to do the sermons. And we decided to transfer our membership here.
Great. Now, let's talk about your experience with Griefshare, because I feel like that's how you really, I was going to say made your mark. You are Mark. But you really made a mark within the ministry here at Shepherd in terms of serving and leading, and then ended up serving with our board of elders and deaconesses. But Griefshare, it seems like you really found a niche where you could use your gifts and passions and your life experiences to help others. Can you tell us about how you got into Griefshare?
Yeah, first it's important to tell the story of what happened.
Yeah.
And August 18th was a Friday evening, and Rhonda and I were at home, and we were getting ready to go to bed, and Rhonda was saying she'd been feeling a little ill, but nothing serious that we thought. And Rhonda said, I wonder if I'm having heart issues, and we kind of just dismissed it. Let's take it easy. Then on August 21st, I had bowling that night, and it was coming up on the 4-year anniversary of her passing. I can't believe it's been 4 years. But it was, I bowled in 9-pin bowling in the little town of Bracken, which is way out on northeast side of San Antonio. And on those nights when I would go out there, I would always call Rhonda, and we would talk on the way. I would pick up something to eat, and then go bowl, and then come home after bowling. I would always call her around 5 o'clock. And I called her at 5 o'clock, and how you feeling, sweetie? And I'm feeling good, just a little tired. Well, at 6:09, she called me, and the entire conversation was, honey, I think I'm having a heart attack. And I said, call 911, I'm on my way. And that was one of my biggest regrets in life was I didn't say I love you, because I didn't think anything about it at the time. I ran inside the bowling alley, told them what was happening, and I called a neighbor to go be with Rhonda, and within a few minutes they called me back and said they're taking her to the heart hospital over there, the Methodist Heart Hospital, which is right there at 10 and 410. So I drove straight over there, and I called Rhonda's sister to let them know what was going on. I got over there, and at 7:01, she was pronounced dead. I mean, it was that fast. And I got to go in and see her before they'd pronounced her dead. I mean, they were working on her. But when I grabbed her hand, I had a feeling she was already gone. There was nothing there, you know. But, you know, you hold out hope and everything. And then, you know, at 7:01, they pronounced her dead, and they came in and told me. And I was mad. I was mad at God. I was mad at the world at that time. You know, it was such a shock to the system. A minister came in. I don't know who he is. I don't know what faith he was. And he prayed with me. And then one of the things he told me was, from now on, whatever you do, you have to do for Mark. Rhonda is taken care of. Rhonda is taken care of. Don't worry about Rhonda. Everything is going to be fine with Rhonda. She's in a wonderful place. Right. I remember those words, but I don't remember the minister. And I always felt bad that I didn't know who that was. Anyway, so I was struggling. I was really, really struggling. And here at Shepherd at the time, we had the Stevens Ministries, and we got a set of books over the year about grief. And I remember reading in one of them that said, you're not a doctor, so don't feel bad that you didn't recognize what was going on. But I did. I don't care what you read. I felt it was my fault. It was my fault. And then I got an email from this wonderful philosopher by the name of Chris, and in there he put in a text that said, Jesus loved you enough to give you grace. You need to love yourself enough to give you grace. And that really hit me. So, Pastor Chris, thank you very much. That was one of the first things that got me over one of the humps. But I was still struggling. And then the holidays were coming up. And at the time, we were working with a funeral home here to offer grief in the holidays. Right. I went to that, and it was so disappointing in that the person that did it, she kept calling Rhonda Wanda. Even though she wrote down Rhonda, every time she would mention the name, it was Wanda. And Dudley Higginbotham was in that group. And instead of calling his wife Stella, it was Shirley. I don't know how he came up. Anyway, me and Dudley were just looking at each other, and I didn't know Dudley at the time, and we just both were looking at each other like, you know, just shaking our heads. How can you do this? So anyway, I knew I could do better, you know, and I made the mistake of mentioning it to Alice Clement. And the next thing I know, Alice says, we have this program called Griefshare, but we don't have anybody to lead it. And I went, I don't know. That's just not my thing. You know, I don't know. And of course, everybody knows, Alice knows, if you tell her no, that means maybe. And so Alice kept after me, and finally I said, okay, let me think about it. She gave me the material, and we did a trial run. It was Dudley Higginbotham, myself, and Vern Clausen. And we just went through it at our own pace, just on our own. And I really liked some of the things I heard in the program. And so I said, I'll do it, but we have to get the new version. We had an out-of-date version. And so we started with a small group of like 8 or 9 people. Mickey was in that group, Mickey Sinclair. And it really went off well, and I really got to liking it. And there's a couple of Bible verses and a couple of things I heard in there. And so then our second group was 19 members, and that was the largest group. And that group just was incredible. And some of the things you see in there and you hear from them, and how seeing the growth of the people, it just makes the world. You know, you see them. When they first come, they can't even tell the story of what happened to the end where they, you know, you see the growth in them individually. And from there, I was committed.
A couple things. One is, how long after Rhonda died did you become involved in that ministry?
Rhonda died in August, and Vern, Dudley, and I started meeting, I want to say it was about Memorial Day of the following year. Okay. So about 8 months, 9 months.
There was some time there. And then you talked about how you've seen people in the program who've gone from not even being able to talk about it to, you know, being able to talk about it calmly. That's one thing I noticed about your story as well, as it sounds like maybe you've told the story before because you were able to tell it very calmly.
Yeah, we have some great stories that have gone through there. We had a lady in our group, and her husband, she's a young lady. I'm probably around 40-ish, I guess. And her husband died of oral cancer. Uh-huh. I had never even heard of oral cancer until she told her story. And she was just, you know, at one point they were told him, hey, there's nothing else we can do for your husband. There's nothing else. To 3 or 4 hours later, he was gone. I mean, and even he just so suddenly.
Yeah.
I actually attended her wedding this past December. It was so cool. It's so cool to see that, from Griefshare, she met somebody through a 10K walk fundraiser on another type of cancer, and they got together, and I got to attend her wedding. And it's like seeing somebody that everybody was encouraging her to go out with her friends to have drinks, and she wouldn't do it, to about a year later getting married. It's like really cool. We also had a lady who used to come every Saturday. We met on Saturday mornings. She would drive every Saturday from Lockhart, Texas to Griefshare. And Lockhart is due east of San Marcos. So that's quite a trip to come to our Griefshare program.
Wow, that is long.
And she had lost a child to suicide. And that's a tough one, and it's really tough. And there's an episode called Complicating Factors, where it talks about suicide. And she just broke down crying in front of the group. And I was really, really concerned. Other members of the group just gave her support, got her through that. And, of course, she had to drive back to Lockhart after the Griefshare. So I checked with her, and I sent her a text message to check. And she said it was so great to be around people that actually understood what I was going through.
Yeah.
Because suicide is one of those things that even Christians don't want to. You kind of shy away from people because you don't know what to say. And so that's another one. It's just really good. And from that 19 group, they bonded so well together that we created a support group for them here at Shepherd, and we call it the Griefshare's slogan is From Mourning to Joy. So we created a group called From Grief to Joy as a kind of a spinoff, and it was a monthly support group, and we got together every month to try to keep them together. We did a little Bible study. It was very informal. And we met all the way up until the pandemic hit, and we were already talking about getting back together when the new building is built.
Oh, that would be fantastic. Well, you've really seen the fruit of the program, haven't you?
Absolutely.
Those are some great stories of how it's made a difference in people's lives. So from mourning to joy, how does this program help a person get from mourning to joy? Because that seems like a long journey. How does it help them?
It is, and it's important to remember that there's no right or wrong way to grieve. And Griefshare makes a comment. It would be nice if you could go to the Bible, open up the Bible to Grief chapter 1, verse 1, and have a checklist. But everybody grieves differently. Sure. There's nothing right, there's nothing wrong. And it's a process of really re-accepting God, is what I guess is the best way, because Dr. Paul Tripp is one of the experts in the program, and he makes a comment in one of the videos that my theology I believe on Sunday is not the theology I believed Monday night when they told me that Rhonda passed away. And it's like everything you believe just leaks out suddenly. The cross doesn't mean anything for you for a while because you're so caught in the emotion of the time. And it's really to me, it's about getting back to remembering that God is really in control, that Jesus died on the cross, why he died on the cross, and it's this big plan. You can't get to eternal life without dying.
So you're a person of, I would say, a strong faith. How has your faith changed? Because you talked about it all fell apart between what you believed Sunday to how you felt about God Monday. How did you rebuild your faith, and how do you look at things differently now than you did before?
I've told a lot of people, I think I'm a better husband now to Rhonda than I was when she was alive. And the reason was, she was always there. And so now that she's gone, it's like it made me rethink about how I did some things, and how I focus. Honestly, I never really opened the Bible much before Rhonda died. I just got away from reading the Bible. Now I do a Bible study on my phone every morning. I do a Bible study on the phone. Without my phone, I'm almost worthless. When Rhonda died, I hate to admit it, I had to go dust the Bible off. I just had to get the inch of dust off of it to read and find, comforting words. Yeah. And so it made me go back and re-look at things. One of the first things I did after Rhonda died was check with Shepherd to see if I was still a member here, because I had dropped away from Shepherd for quite a while, before Rhonda passed away. And Rhonda had some issues in her life that made her question God and made me feel guilty about my relationship with God. But Griefshare was there and had an answer for me, and there, we talk about, in the suicide episode, of all the episodes, I didn't think I'd get anything out of suicide. But on part of the suicide, it says, when Jesus died for our sins, it's for our sins past, present, and future. Mm-hmm. So when Rhonda drifted away, even though she was sinning, Jesus died for her sins even then. Mm. And that was like, wow, because I questioned whether Rhonda was in heaven for a while, you know. But that brought me back, and just seeing the things in there. I mean, it's a wonderful program. It's in a little bit about it. It's a 3-prong attack. It's 13 sessions long, and you can pick it up at any time. Obviously, it works best if you start at the beginning, but anytime, if somebody, unfortunately, we can only offer it quarterly or something like that. So if somebody passes away and they have to join in the middle, so be it, and
it's better than nothing, right?
Absolutely. And then just, we catch you up on the next group, and so you get the full program. Sure. But it's a 3-prong attack. We first, I keep talking to Jimmy Friesen. I'm going to get you to make me a little simple 3-legged stool and take the different legs apart, because the 3 legs represent the 3 parts of the Griefshare program. Okay. One of the parts is watching the videos, and we watch the videos on whatever the topic is, and then the second part of it is discussing what we watched, and that's the share part of Griefshare. And then the third part of it is they have daily exercises throughout the week to keep them focused on the material. Okay. And there's 5 of them, even though there's 7 days between, but they figure one of them's Sunday and one of them's your session day, and so that there's 5 different sessions. If you skip any one of those 3 steps, it makes it harder to keep that thing balanced. Oh, okay. And so by taking all 3 parts together, makes the program most effective. Mm-hmm.
I want to go back to something you said earlier. You said in grief, there's not a right way to grieve, there's not a wrong way. So how can a curriculum give you any help on what to do if there's no right way or no wrong way? Well,
there's a lot of things they just tell you to remind you that. Okay. Like I said, there's no checklist. So, some people do things. One of the things that they kind of advise you, don't always go to that cemetery and look at that tombstone. That's a constant reminder. But some people, that's very comforting to them. Yeah. I myself do something that probably most people would not do. I watch Rhonda's funeral because we recorded it regularly. It just brings me comfort and peace. Huh. I know every one of the stories by heart. Yeah. I look at it, the man that read at Rhonda's funeral, he read at our wedding, and he has since passed away. Oh. And there's a lot of memories there. Yeah. And just some people would say you're just bringing it up again and bringing it back in your mind. But to me, it brings comfort. So that's why there really is no right way and no wrong way.
Would it be fair to say that Griefshare gives guidelines and there are exceptions to every guideline?
Absolutely. Yeah, okay. There's a rule and there's an exception to every rule. Okay. But they give you some helpful hints, tips to help. One of the things I would tell people to do is when you lose your loved one, you've lost a lot more than just a person. Yeah. Maybe you've lost the cook of the family. You've lost the person that took care of the car. You lost the lawn person. So they call those supplemental losses. And so what they suggest is you write out all those supplemental losses. You've lost the person that sent the Christmas cards. You lost the person that sent the birthday cards. All those things. Think about all those things. And then if you put down the ones that you can take care of, and find somebody to help you with the ones you can't do. If you can't mow the lawn, let the church know. Maybe they'll find somebody that would be helping you with get the lawn mowed and things like that. So that's one of the really good tips. I tell people journal. I have never been a person to do journaling, and even when I went through the Griefshare program, I didn't do journaling, but I found I actually did journaling. It's this thing called Facebook. Oh, I was putting out there how I felt at the different times about different things. Oh, this is the 2-month anniversary of Rhonda's passing. And, that's a journal. Yeah. It's just not in the form of a journal. So, but if you can get into journaling, that'll help you. Make sure you record those stories that are so special to you. And because if you ever forget them, they're totally gone. But, there's some really special stories. And praise the good things that will happen. Good things will happen. I was going through email one time, and I was just like, I was feeling lonely, felt bad about myself. I was going through some old emails from Rhonda, and I found Rhonda's pasta sauce recipe. Now I make Rhonda's pasta sauce. Now people are asking me for Rhonda's pasta sauce recipe.
Is that right?
It's like, are you kidding me? I can't cook, and now people are asking me for a recipe. It's just little things like that are just out of the blue, thing. And then, and they have these things, they call them ambushes, where out of the blue, it just hits you. Mm-hmm. I had one Sunday coming to church. On the way to church, the song Help Me Rhonda came on the radio. Oh. I absolutely love that song. Always loved it. Loved it before I met Rhonda. Yeah. Rhonda hated that song. Absolutely hated that song. But it hit me as I was turning into the parking lot here at Shepherd, and I had a little cry in the parking lot. Mm. Why? I don't know. But, just for that moment, it hit me. Griefshare calls those ambushes. We had Walter Ward in one of our groups. He called them landmines. And so I like the landmine because that's so true. And it comes out of the blue. You just don't really know when one of those are going to hit you.
One thing I'm hearing is that Griefshare puts language around our experiences, and sometimes that helps us to feel a little more in control of the situation when I can at least describe, that's an ambush. That's what just happened to me. Those are supplemental losses, and all of a sudden you can categorize things, and it helps you process it. It sounds like
right, and I mean they give you all types of little things, checklists. The book is really incredible, and the book has a lot of helpful tips and hints and things like that. One of the episodes is called the episode is called Why. Whenever somebody dies, the immediate question is why? Why? Why did this have to happen? Why? Yeah. And I play a game with the kids. Do you remember the old game, Who Am I? You put the card. Yeah. So we do that. And I hand everybody a card with an animal on there, and I have an animal. And everybody does it, and it's just like normal. Well, when I do it, I'll ask you, okay, I have a dog, okay? Does it have a tail? And you say yes. It has to be yes or no questions. Then I'll ask the next person, does it fly? And they'll say no. Then I'll ask you, does it have 4 legs? And you'll say yes. Then I'll go back go around the room. Does it fly? I keep repeating that question. And the whole point of the exercise is if you keep asking the same questions, you'll never get anywhere. But if you try to turn it into, how can I glorify God out of this? How can I make a positive out of this? Mm-hmm. And we played that game one time, and one of the girls like, my dad died. There is nothing positive. My dad is dead. Yeah. And she left angry, and I reached out to her and with no luck, and I think she was ignoring me. The following week, she came in with a 3-page list of all the positives that she found. She was determined to find positives from her father's death. I was like, where did this come from? It was like, what a 180 in 1 week just by making that list.
How do you explain that? Where did that come from?
The Holy Spirit.
That's what I was thinking. Wow.
Just like, it was just incredible. No more cancer. I mean, some of them are obvious, but she had a lot of different things on that list.
Yeah. Now, have you found different kinds of grief to be different to work with? So for her, it was the loss of her dad. I would think a loss of a spouse would be the most common. And then you mentioned suicide earlier. Those are 3 very different situations. Are there rules that, I shouldn't say rules, are there guidelines that tend to apply across the board for dealing with all kinds of grief? And then are there some things that are particular?
That pretty much the program is across the board. Okay. We do have an episode that's called Complicating Factors, and that's where they hit those special ones. Okay. The suicide, the murder, because that's a whole nother thing, because you're going to have to relive it when the case comes up. Mm-hmm. And one of the things, everybody that you see in the Griefshare, whether it's the experts or the people that are telling their personal stories, every one of them has experienced grief in some way, and they tell you what they experience across the bottom. Okay. There's people that lost people at Virginia Tech University in the mass shooting. Death of a pastor. I lost someone in a car accident, airplane crash. So, I mean, it helps you identify that I'm not alone in this. There are other people that have gone through the exact one. One of my all-time favorite quotes is from Zig Ziglar. He's one of the experts, the business person, Zig Ziglar. Yeah. I wish I had a Zig Ziglar voice, but I don't. But he says, and I always personalize it, Rhonda is not lost. I know exactly where Rhonda is today.
Yeah.
She's with Jesus Christ.
Right.
And for me to wish that Rhonda is with me right now is the most selfish thing I could wish for. You know, that's a powerful topic. I mean, that's a powerful saying.
That is. So it really shows how your faith reframes it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, when you started out Griefshare, mostly church members here, I know in later sessions, later groups, it was mostly an outreach to the community, right?
Right. We have actually, it is very interesting in that I would say 75% of the people that have gone through our Griefshare program are non-members of Shepherd. Now, they're mostly members of other churches, and a few are non-members of any church, and we have tried to reach out to those, but it is really a community outreach. We do better connecting with the community than we do with our own people, and that's something that has always been a challenge to me. How are we missing our own people here?
Yeah.
But you know, we'll keep working on that.
Yeah, it would be great to reach both effectively,
Right.
the community and the congregation. For those who are watching who are experiencing grief, throughout our conversation, you've given some excellent tips. Are there any other tips or suggestions you would give about how to grieve in a healthy way?
Well, mostly it's tips on how you can just get through the day-to-day.
Okay.
We talk about in Griefshare, what's your next thing? What's the next thing you need to take care of? And if you only get that accomplished, great. If you don't get that accomplished, there's tomorrow.
Okay.
I did this before I knew about Griefshare, but carry a pad of paper and pen with you everywhere and start making lists, because so much is happening. There are so many people that you need to contact. You just can't remember it all. So make lists of things that need to get done. But basically is just try to do the next thing. I used to tell people every day I would take 3 steps forward. Some days I took 3 steps back. Some days I only took 1 step back. And that way, on those days, I went 2 steps forward. It just constantly go forward. Griefshare calls that leaning into your grief. You want to lean into it. Don't let it throw you around, but try to control what is happening.
Okay.
You know, and so that's the main thing. You know, don't isolate yourself. A lot of people like to isolate and stay away from people.
Okay.
Get back in the groove of things. Get back into church. Get back into doing the activities that you are doing. Those type things will help you a lot.
So when we're talking grief, we're not just talking about how to not feel so sad. We're talking about how to counter the debilitating effects of grief. Because if you have experienced significant grief, you know it can shut you down. So I hear all of that going on in the program.
Right.
You know, different ways to think about it, to help you to not feel as sad, or at least to make some sense of things. And then also how to bring yourself out of a pit so you can still function.
Right. We offer all 3 of the Griefshare programs here. One of them is called Loss of a Spouse, and we use that as an introduction. I mean, there's some topics that are very specific to the spouse. How do you handle their belongings and things like that? And then the second one is the Griefshare program. And we kind of lead loss of a spouse as a lead-in into Griefshare, trying to get them into our Griefshare group.
Okay.
And the third one is surviving the holidays, because dealing with Christmas, and that first Christmas was murder. I mean, I'll be honest, it was tough. You know, leaving church, most wonderful service there is our candlelight service, and going home to an empty house. You know, that first time, that was tough.
Yeah.
Or driving along and seeing the parking lots empty, and knowing everybody else is with family right now. You know, and those are the things, and surviving the holidays helps you deal with that. How to deal with going to a Christmas party, you know, that first Christmas party that you need to attend. You know, that's tough. And I implemented some of the things they tried. They call it the 15-minute rule. Let the host know you'll go for 15 minutes. If you feel comfortable, you'll stay. If you don't feel comfortable, you're going to just sneak out. But at least the host knows about it.
What a good idea.
And so that's one of the things I did the first Christmas.
Yeah. So you found things that helped you personally. You've been able to test them out personally and vouch for them that, you know, this is a helpful strategy.
And the kicker for me that really got me committed is, and I use it as my personal Bible verse, 2 Corinthians 1, 3, and 4. And I cannot quote Bible verses. I'm terrible at memorizing Bible verses. But it's the one about all comfort comes from God so that we can comfort others.
Yes.
And so
great verse.
That is my personal Bible verse. Anything church-related I send out, I put that Bible verse at the bottom of it.
Really? Yeah, that one's a part of our opening liturgy for our funerals. That is such a strong verse. Excellent. Excellent. Mark, I really commend you for taking your own pain and your own experience and using it to help others. I think that is one of the best things that we can do with our painful experiences is, I'm thinking of from Genesis, Joseph said, what was meant for evil, God has used for good, that kind of thing. You know, something that in your life, you could have gone the other direction and become bitter, but you said, by the grace of God, I'm going to turn this around, and I'm going to somehow use my experience to relate to others and to help them through their struggles.
I've kind of dedicated myself to, this is for Rhonda, is the way I look at it. Really? I'm doing it for Rhonda, and even though Griefshare tells you not to do it that way, but I'm doing it for Jesus, but I'm doing it also for Rhonda.
Right.
You know, and it's a way, I did not want her death to be meaningless.
And it hasn't been. God has taken that hard thing in your life, and he has brought good things through you. So thank you, Mark. Thank you for your leadership of our Griefshare ministry.
Okay, you're welcome.
If people would like to get involved, what's the best way to do that?
Well, they can reach out to myself. We now have a second facilitator that helps with Griefshare now, Jackie Welch. She's actually going to lead our next group, which will be starting in August. If you reach out to the church office, they can get you connected with us, or you can call me directly, and I can give you more information about the Griefshare program and give you a little bit of information about it.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much, Mark, for this conversation today.
Oh, you're welcome.
And thank you for watching the Shepherd Podcast. I found this to be a very practical conversation, and grief is something that we all have to deal with at some point in life. So I hope that you found some things that you can incorporate either now or later on in life. This might be one where you want to revisit it at a later time and revisit some of those tips and guidance. Please tune in the next time to the Shepherd Podcast as we continue to bring you more of the great people here at Shepherd of the Hills. Until then, the Lord's blessings to you. May he keep you healthy and safe and strong. The peace of the Lord be with you today.